Getting ready to celebrate our nation, freedom, and military right after the show. I'm headed to Norfolk, Virginia, home to our nation's largest naval station. The USS Monterey has pulled into the Town Point Park waterfront. I'll kick off the day with Fox and Friends joining our signature morning show in the 8 a.m. Eastern hour. Can't wait to board that ship you see there, the USS Monterey, for a Steel Beach picnic, where I'll have the honor of a unique meeting with some of the sailors and military leadership. Already, Fox has had a sneak peek, and you're getting to see some of that video right here. The U.S. Fleet Forces Band will lead the night's festivities, and they've invited me to be the mistress of ceremonies. I'm honored. Bring in my family, and I'll be signing copies of my book, Lifting Up Military Families. I hope you'll come out and join us there on the Norfolk waterfront. Also, be a part of our Proud American campaign on social media. Hashtag your picture, status on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram with that. Happy 4th. Here's Dana.
A supreme decision facing President Trump as he weighs candidates for the highest court in the land. Hello, everyone. I'm Dana Perino, and this is the Daily Briefing. President Trump forging full speed ahead, already interviewing several contenders to replace Justice Anthony Kennedy, with plans to meet more prospects in the next few days before announcing his decision on Monday.
Look, the main thing the president is looking for are people that fit the qualifications that you would want in a Supreme Court justice. Tremendous intellect, someone who will stick to upholding the Constitution, and somebody who has great judicial temperament.
Chief White House correspondent John Roberts is live on the North Lawn. So how far has the president gotten with the interview process so far?
Well, if you believe that the president has got between 6 and 7 nominees, then he's gotten a little more than halfway. The president has schedule clear this morning, so there was lots of room in the president's schedule for more meetings today. Yesterday, as you mentioned, Dana, he met with 4 prospects to replace Kennedy on the Supreme Court. We're told that those people are Amy Coney Barrett, who is an appellate judge from the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals, Brett Kavanaugh from the D.C. Circuit, which is often referred to as the farm team for the Supreme Court, Raymond Kethledge from the 6th Circuit Court of Appeals, and Amul Thapar, also from the 6th Circuit Court of Appeals. In the Oval Office yesterday with the Dutch Prime Minister, the president said that the selection process is moving ahead quickly. He's got to get it done quickly because he's got that announcement coming up on Monday, and that he's going to meet with maybe 2 or 3 more candidates before making a decision. Listen to what the president said.
They are outstanding people. They are really incredible people in so many different ways, academically and every other way. And I had a very, very interesting morning.
Other judges that we're told are on the short list and could meet with the president here at the White House: Joan Larson, who's again from the 6th Circuit Court of Appeals. That seems to be a very popular circuit for picking Supreme Court nominees. And Thomas Hardiman from the 3rd Circuit Court of Appeals as well. Utah Senator Mike Lee received a phone call from the president yesterday. There you see Larson and Hardiman. Mike Lee received a phone call from the president yesterday. According to Lee, the two of them had a very good conversation. He said it went well. We'll see how it goes, but sources that I've been talking to say there's no way that Mike Lee is going to become the next Supreme Court justice. Sources do tell me that the front runners likely are Kavanaugh, Barrett, and Kethledge. Conservative groups have a little bit of a concern with Barrett and Kethledge in that they haven't been on the bench that long, at least the Court of Appeals, and their record is, quote, lighter. Kavanaugh's got the heavier record because he's been on the Court of Appeals here in D.C. for quite a while, though some conservative groups give him demerit points for an Obamacare ruling that he made in recent years. But he would seem to be, Dana, the strongest horse. I'm told that if you're looking for a justice in the model of Neil Gorsuch, Kavanaugh would be your judge.
All right, that's interesting. And there was another decision that could be coming out of the White House any moment now, maybe even as we speak, about reversing the Obama-era rule involving college admissions. Do you have anything on that?
Correct. This is part of a broader revision of Obama-era guidance documents that the Department of Justice has been undertaking, and they will be rescinding a number of them this afternoon. This particular guidance encouraged the consideration of race in college admissions, the Obama administration issuing the guidance to promote diversity on college campuses. But the rescission comes as the Department of Justice is investigating a complaint against Harvard University from a group of Asian American students who say they were being held to a more rigorous admissions process than were some other students. Devin O'Malley, who is a spokesman with the DOJ, in a statement to Fox News saying, quote, "The executive branch cannot circumvent Congress or the courts by creating guidance that goes beyond the law and in some instances stays on the books for decades. The Justice Department remains committed to enforcing the law and protecting all Americans from all forms of illegal race-based discrimination." The rescissions haven't been made public just yet. We should get the list sometime this afternoon from the DOJ. Dana?
All right, John, thank you, and happy 4th of July to you. See you on Thursday.
Thank you, and the same to you.
Thank you. And joining me for a deeper look at all of this is Dan Henninger, deputy editorial page editor of the Wall Street Journal and a Fox News contributor. So it's not been even a week yet since Anthony Kennedy made his decision. And a lot of people have lost their heads. And today, the Wall Street Journal, in the editorial page, tried to just calm some feelings about this. Your initial thoughts?
Well, they have lost their heads, at least nominally, over the possibility they think that Roe v. Wade could be overturned if Trump appoints another person to the Supreme Court. Roe v. Wade, decided 45 years ago, is a well-established precedent, but the opposition has loaded up everything on the idea that Roe would be overturned, and it doesn't matter to them whether it's Brett Kavanaugh or Amy Barrett, Raymond Ketledge. They have raised this objection going all the way back to when Anthony Kennedy himself and David Souter were nominated. They said they would overturn Roe v. Wade. Guess what, Dana? Those were the co-authors of Planned Parenthood v. Casey, which affirmed Roe v. Wade.
And that was in 1992.
Yeah.
The Quinnipiac poll that came out yesterday asked, do you agree or disagree with Roe v. Wade? And the public says in this poll, 63% agree with it and would not want to see it overturned. And do you think that because it's been in place for 45 years, that maybe the justices would not want to overturn it?
I doubt that there is a majority on this court to literally overturn Roe v. Wade. But let's understand what we're saying here. We're talking about the core right, the right to an abortion. That doesn't mean that the public is in favor of unlimited abortion, as some Democrats and liberals want, nor would they be opposed, I think, to some states refining that right within those states. But the core right that was established by Roe in 1975, I think, is intact and safe because Justice Roberts really reveres stare decisis, the strength of precedents. And this is a precedent that the country has lived with for a long time. That main thing there, the core right of Roe, I don't think is in danger. But the liberals are going to try to oppose any of these nominees based on that idea.
Well, I worked on Roberts and Alito nominations, and they certainly said that they would vote to overturn it as well. And maybe there will be changes, especially in the states, as you're saying, as there have been. You wrote today about Neil Gorsuch, is that the liberal line is always that Roe hangs by a judicial thread, and one more conservative justice will doom it, yet Roe still stands after nearly 5 decades. Our guess is that this will be true even if President Trump nominates another Justice Gorsuch. But if you are on the liberal side of things and you are skeptical and worried, do you think that maybe they will be able to energize the political base to come out and vote against Republicans because of their worry that this is actually going to be something that gets overturned in this next 10 years?
Yeah, Dana, I think that's mainly what is going on here. They're not going to be able to defeat this nominee, and they're using the Roe, waving this Roe around, both to raise funds and to generate turnout for November and possibly for 2020. Yeah, I think their bigger concern is that something Donald Trump has talked about a lot with Neil Gorsuch, which is the idea of judge-made law. Judges finding goals that they want to achieve and then finding reasoning behind it. Gorsuch very much is opposed to that sort of thing, and I think this new nominee, no matter who it is going to end the liberals' ability to file lawsuits and get judicial results in the courts.
Now, I don't know if you have a crystal ball, but I think that issue is so important that in our next segment, Judge Napolitano is coming on specifically to talk about that, because it sounds a little esoteric. You're talking Chevron deference, and you're like, oh, it's a little bit in the weeds, but it's super important, and it can make a big difference to businesses, individuals, freedom, liberty, all across the board.
Well, Dana, that was what is at issue with the thing you just talked about, where the White House is announcing the end of these Obama rules on diversity.
Right.
But that was an executive order in putting in place a policy that they could not get through the legislature, so simply did it by decree. And that is precisely what Trump is pushing back against.
Right. And that's why I love these fights in a way, because it gets us back to talking about what did our founding fathers really want for this country, and when it means rule by the people. And that's what this court will have to deal with, rule by the people. I mean, here we are on the eve of the 4th of July having a chance to talk about it.
What role do the American people have? Where is their voice represented? Normally it's in legislatures, and the liberals have gone around it by going through the courts and the executive branch because they cannot get these policies through legislatures like the House or the Senate.
Right, and that's been my point, is that, then whichever party it is, you have to be more persuasive on the merits.
Exactly.
And if you're not, you're going to lose, and you can't expect the courts to do it for you.
And that's why they are in a state of hysteria over this new nominee, because I think the Supreme Court will no longer be ratifying judge-made law at the lower courts.
All right, fascinating. Thank you, Dan Henninger, and happy 4th of July to you.
Thank you.
So lots of Americans hitting the road for the holiday right now, and we'll check out how much you're going to have to pay at the pump when you fill up. Plus, a key Supreme Court ruling could be in play. We're just talking about that. And we're not talking about Roe v. Wade on this one. Judge Napolitano will join me to explain the Chevron deference. And I'm telling on a Supreme Court nominee, some court watchers say another issue could be just as important. It's known as the Chevron deference. It allows federal agencies to interpret ambiguous statutes, and federal courts must defer to their rulings. Some have recently pushed back at the ruling, indicating that the Trump administration, as well as Justice Gorsuch and the late Antonin Scalia, say no more. I'm joined now by Judge Andrew Napolitano, Fox News senior judicial analyst. You brought this up when this news broke. You were on set with me to talk about something else. The Anthony Kennedy news broke, and in all the issues that you said were going to be so important, I think this was the second one. You hear a lot about Roe v. Wade, but this one matters a lot to Americans everywhere.
Ever since the presidency of Woodrow Wilson, we have administrative agencies. They're not in the executive branch. They're not in the legislative branch. They're not in the judicial branch, but they do the jobs of all three. So I'll give you an example. The Food and Drug Administration will write its own rules. It will enforce its own rules, and it will interpret its own rules. When it does that, and the person against whom those rules have been written, enforced, and interpreted challenges it, what should judges do? Should they look at the two as an equal, the Food and Drug Administration and a company that wants to register a drug, a prescription drug? Or should they defer to the Food and Drug Administration because it has expertise in the matter?
That's right.
That deference is known as Chevron deference, from a famous case involving Chevron.
Chevron, the company.
Correct. And when courts defer to the administrative agency, it gives them a leg up. It allows them to do the job that judges are supposed to do, which is interpret the law. Justice Gorsuch is a champion against this deference. I suggest to you nearly everyone on the list of 25 is also against it. Why should the average person care about it? Because someday the average person might be caught up on this.
That's right.
The EPA shows up on your farm and decides that what you think is a mud puddle is a navigable water, and they're going to regulate it. They're going to write the rules for it. They're going to apply the rules against you, and they're going to interpret the rules when you challenge them. And
they could even take it away from you.
Correct. And then when you want to challenge the EPA, are you in an equal position with them, or do they have a leg up?
Now, Justice John Paul Stevens wrote that judges are not experts in the field and are not part of either political branch of the government, and therefore he was saying that's why you defer to the experts.
I will tell you, the progressives, the people who believe we should be governed by experts, not by Congress, not by people like the rest of us are, they love Chevron deference. They love giving this extra level of protection to administrative agencies. Those who believe that your private property is yours, or when you go into court, your adversary has the same standing as you, whether it's the government or not, they are against Chevron deference. The president is against it, as will be this nominee.
Let me also ask you then about Roe v. Wade. Jeremy Peters of the New York Times wrote about the implications of overturning it. He said, if it is successful, the Trump administration could come closer than any Republican White House has to achieving a goal conservatives have longed for since the New Deal, curtailing the reach of a federal government they say has grown too far and invasive.
I think he's correct. But I agree with what Danny just said. I don't think Roe versus Wade is going to go away, even if the Chief Justice did vote with the other conservatives, because it will devolve to the states. If you abolish Roe versus Wade, abortion is not unlawful. There will be 50 different abortion laws because we have 50 different states.
But I imagine that the pro-abortion rights groups, pro-choice groups, would say, well, that's not good enough, because that means women who live in a state like Mississippi that might really restrict abortion would not be treated the same same as women everywhere.
That is their argument. The counter argument is there are advocacy groups that will get those women to where they can have abortions. You know what? I'm not going to advertise this because I'm pro-life. Come to New Jersey. Abortion is lawful up to the moment of birth, and the state will pay for it if you can't afford it, even if you don't live in New Jersey.
They'll pay for another person to come from?
Yes, yes. So you have these wacky progressive laws out there that will allay the anxieties of those who think that Judge fill in the blank, whoever the president's going to nominate, is going to invalidate abortion.
But do you also agree that because it's been on the books for 45 years that it's unlikely to be overturned?
Yes.
And so why is everyone so anxious about it then? Because
abortion is in the DNA of the Democrats, and 60%, I'm surprised at this number, 60 to 67%, depending upon which poll you look at, of the American voting public believes abortion should be lawful in some form.
Right.
So the Democrats believe they have a winner on this issue if the president's nominee is totally against it.
You're exactly right on those numbers. The other thing I would point out is that there's not a big gender gap between women who approve of some abortion and men. It's actually pretty much the same.
At one time, you're right. At one time, there was that gender gap, but there isn't any longer.
No, I think the time has passed, but
yes.
We'll see. It's always fascinating to learn from you. He's our trusty legal professor
and
here.
Congratulations on this. I know I'm going to hear about this. The Dana Perino studio.
Well, it's not just mine. Of course, I share it with many of my amazing colleagues, but I'm glad to be here. I do feel a little small inside of that. All right. Do you have a motorcycle or do you want one? Well, the president has a message for anyone in the market. Plus, are you about to hit the road on this terrible Tuesday? Jeff Flock is already out there, and he has some advice we could all use. Hey, Jeff.
Get out while you still can, Dana. Get on the road now if you can. I tell you, it's moving pretty quick here outside Chicago. We'll have the full national picture, though, for you, and talk about the price of gas. Maybe you'll be surprised. Stay tuned.
Number of people are hitting the road today despite gas prices near 4-year highs. Right now, Jeff Flock is out and about in Chicago. Jeff, we only see each other on these holidays. What are you seeing out there today?
That's the only time you care about me, is when I'm out here on the road. And I've got good news to report, Dana. Actually, at least in Chicago, not so bad, despite those gas prices. Put them up there. The average now for a gallon of regular nationwide, $2.86. That's about 63 cents more than it was this time last year. If you look at the 2-year chart, we've seen nothing but a steady increase in gasoline prices. But with the economy doing so well, people have money in their pockets, and so they can afford it. Despite this, I would point out something that sort of flew under the radar a little bit as we look out on Interstate 294. This is headed north toward Wisconsin. You look at states that just in the last week increased their gas tax. As you know, the federal gas tax hasn't gone up since 1993. A lot of people think maybe it should to fund infrastructure. 7 states, though, on a state level, increased their state gas tax. So, you know, they're getting their money one way or the other, I suppose, but people don't seem to care. A lot of people on the roads this holiday.
And Jeff, I mean, I see you're moving along at a pretty good clip. Do you think the traffic will get a lot worse over the next day? If 3 times the number of people are on the roads, it sounds like it's going to be bad.
Exactly. AAA keeps saying this is the all-time record for travel. I think it's 47 million people are going to travel, almost 40 million by car alone. As I said, the economy's doing well. People don't seem, remember the thing called a staycation? I think people have forgotten all about that. People are on a go-cation this year, and so they say it's going to be bad this afternoon, particularly after work this afternoon. So right now, we're still working. The traffic's still moving. Good sign.
You got a nice steady pace there. I hope you keep it up, and have a great 4th of July to you, Jeff Flock. Thank you.
You too, Dana. Thanks.
And President Trump sending a new warning to Harley-Davidson. The president tweeting, "Now that Harley-Davidson is moving part of its operation out of the U.S., my administration is working with other motorcycle companies who want to move into the U.S. Harley customers are not happy with their move. Sales are down 7%. In 2017, the U.S. is where the action is." That was the president's tweet. President Trump has threatened to impose higher taxes on Harley after it announced plans to shift some productions overseas to avoid European Union tariffs. So a federal judge dealing a blow to the zero-tolerance immigration policy. We're going to be live at the border with that. Plus, you may have seen her powerful political ad. Millions have. Now you're going to get a chance to meet her, Texas congressional candidate and veteran, MJ Hager. She'll join me next.
Wait, barred because I was a woman? That's ridiculous.
So I sued the Pentagon, but not just about that job, about the ban on women serving in all ground combat jobs. And I went to
ICE facility where a number of detainees, small number of detainees, were reunited with their families. And the Democratic lawmaker says he's concerned about the process. That facility, not one of the ones named in a federal lawsuit, where the court just dealt a blow to the president's zero-tolerance policy on immigration. Casey Stegall is live in El Paso, Texas. Casey.
Dana, good to see you. That federal injunction that you speak of actually targets 5 specific immigration and customs enforcement field offices around the country. The court paperwork alleges that those offices actually have almost stopped granting parole since early last year, and they say that more than 1,000 seekers of asylum who met the requirements were denied a chance to not be detained, even though they were eligible, until they waited for their court hearings. The offices include the one here in El Paso, Detroit, Los Angeles, Newark, and Philadelphia. Now, that judge is ruling and has said that the federal government violating its own rules when it comes to the treatment of people seeking asylum, and ordered ICE to stop what the suit called arbitrary detention of legitimate asylum seekers. This as top leaders within the Catholic Church made a trip to the Texas-Mexico border, meeting with those impacted in holding centers, talking with law enforcement, and praying. The delegation of various archbishops and bishops holding mass at prominent pilgrimage sites, and even a service at one of those detention centers for kids.
I think it is so important that these children be united with their parents. It's just a natural feeling and understanding of how sad it is that they are not with their parents, and how important it is that, as we are all are trying to do, make sure that they are united with their families.
The bishops saying that they get this real sense of hope from virtually everyone that they've met on their tour down here. And as you know, Dana, the Catholic Church has been playing a very large humanitarian role. Many Catholic charities all up and down the border with Mexico have pitched in and helped some of these illegal immigrants in their time of need.
All right,
Back
Casey
to you, Dana.
Stegall, thank you so much. Now let's bring in MJ Hager. She's Democratic candidate for Congress from Texas. It's a pleasure to have you on the program. We're going to get to your political ad in a moment, because I watched it and loved it too, and I want to talk to you about that. But because you're in Texas, and I'm curious about when you're out talking to your potential constituents, people you want to represent, what are you hearing about immigration, and do you have any particular feelings about what needs to happen on the border?
Yeah, I think that people are definitely aware of what's going on, and it's one of those things actually that I think is rare, that is actually uniting people instead of dividing people. Most people that I talk to, no matter what their party affiliation, they want a strong and secure country, but they understand that strength and compassion are not mutually exclusive terms, that we have a humanitarian crisis on our hands, that we have a reputation to protect and a moral high ground on the world stage. It's definitely something that I think is going to be a complex issue that we need to work on.
Now that your profile has been raised to a national level, there are Democrats out there, some, just a few, suggesting that abolishing ICE would be a good next step. Is that something you would agree with?
I don't agree that abolishing an agency is the answer when that agency is, trying to implement policies and procedures that were handed down last minute without resources and without guidance. I liken it to the problems that we have in the VA. I don't want to see the VA abolished, but there's definitely a lot of things inside the system that are broken, that are crippling the good men and women who are working in the VA to deliver the services that our veterans deserve. I feel the same way about ICE. I think that we need to be talking more about policies, and it doesn't matter which department is handling those policies. We need to make sure that we're enabling the good people who are working in these organizations to act in a way that they can sleep at night.
And you're a veteran yourself. I was curious, Did the Democratic Party come to you wanting you to run, thinking that you had potential, or did you raise your hand and say it's time for me to try this out?
I had a mutual friend who is not a party operative or anybody who said that they were made aware of my bio, and they asked me a few questions about what I thought about the direction of the country and suggested that I run. And honestly, I didn't even really consider it until I was holding my, I have a young kid. I have 2 young kids, and the youngest was crying, and I was telling him in the middle of the night I was going to protect him and take care of him, and I realized that if I meant that, I had to do everything I could.
Step up. Let me show a little bit of that ad. So this ad is a long one, about 3.5 minutes. I looked at it. I know about 5 million people have. Let's take just a look at a part of it, if we can.
One of my first memories was of a door, but it was my dad throwing my mom through a glass one. 3 years later, Mom got the courage to walk out the door, and she opened a new one for my sister and me here in Texas. And it was here that I put my foot on the gas and followed my dream to be a pilot. And that meant opening, pushing, sometimes kicking through every door that was in my way.
Certainly you served your country well, and now you want to run for office. I want to ask you about this ad's popularity, because about 5 million people have looked at it. That's all across the country. But what are you finding in your district? I know that the Cook Political Report says the Republicans are favored by about 10 points right now. What is your plan to try to narrow that gap and win in November?
Yeah, last week, actually, Cook moved the race closer to my favor, and a few other organizations have as well. And I think that they're doing that not just because of the strength of my candidacy, but because of the vulnerability of the incumbent. He hasn't held a town hall in 5 years. Definitely when you talk to the people in my district, they're not talking about the one-liner headlines and the talking points. They're talking about issues of putting food on the table, getting their kids quality education and health care. They're talking about absent representation. One of the reasons that the video resonated with people across the country and in my district is because that's something a lot of people can relate to, that absent representation, their voice isn't being heard because they're not a donor.
I know that when you're out there, of course, the economy in most places is very, very good. I know there might be pockets that are not, but overall, the Democrats are running against a party that can boast that it has helped the economy get to where it is today. So what are you hearing out there? What is your message about why your representation would be better from an economic standpoint?
Yeah, one of those pockets that things are not going as well as my district. We definitely have higher unemployment than the national average and the Texas average. And it's definitely not something that I think that people understand that economic issues are complex, and that a lot of things, that policies that are put in place take sometimes years to have an impact. And I think that they understand that there are problems with trade wars. There's problems with, how we treat our allies on an international, stage. And there's problems with making agreements and then backing out of them. I think that people in my district just want a representative who will hear them and will look out for their interests instead of their own resumes.
I have just I'm running out of time, but a quick question. Were you surprised at the response to that ad?
I was surprised at how many people in my district recognize me. I can be out, standing in line buying breakfast tacos for my team or something like that, and I'm having to be cognizant of not going out in my pajamas and having to make sure that I'm on a little bit more, and that's exciting because I've lived in this district almost my whole life, and most people in my district don't know who their congressman is anyway. So
that's true. Well, MJ Hager, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me on, Dana.
And we reached out to Hager's opponent, Congressman John Carter, and we are just working out scheduling. We'll hope that he's on the show with us in the near future. Fox News Alert rescuers trying to figure out how to get 12 young boys and their coach out of a cave in Thailand. They were found alive on high ground 3 miles inside a flooded cave, and some of them cannot swim. And more rain is on the way. Greg Palcott is live in London. Greg, the world is glued to their TV screens to find out how the rescue is going, but it could take a while.
Absolutely could. It is an amazing story, though, and hopefully we're all hoping it'll have a happy ending. It happened about 10 days ago that these soccer team members, ages 11 to 16, as well as their 25-year-old coach, after practicing a little soccer, decided to explore a cave, and everything went bad. The rain came down torrentially, flooding parts of the cave. Thankfully, Monday night local time, teams searching, Thai and international rescue workers, divers, including U.S. military service members from Japan, found them, but they were about 2.5 miles down the cave. They are said right now to be in stable condition. Unbelievably, they survived drinking water that was dripping off the sides of the caves, but they had no food. Rescue workers brought them liquid food, high protein, as well as medicine, and now they are with them to keep them alive and get them ready for the next important step, Dana.
Okay, well, Greg, then what is that next step? How are they going to get them out?
The next step is trying to get them out, and it is a very tricky procedure. The latest word that we are getting is that being considered is to put a special breathing gear on them, special diving gear, and to bring them out in a sort of a dive-out process. But we are told, according to the officials on the ground, that the boys have to be made stronger, and it could take a couple of more days. But there is rain coming, so it's got to happen in the next couple of days. The alternatives are quite lengthy and arduous, drilling into the side of the mountain to get to the cave or waiting for the floodwaters to subside. That could take months. So the first option being looked at very hard right now, but at least the family and friends and the rescue workers are very happy right now. Indeed. These boys are still alive. And again, that next challenging step, getting them out. Back to you, Dave.
All right, Greg Palkot, thank you. So trade tariffs and tofu, how one is affecting the other. Plus, new calls for the top Senate Democrat to wage war against the president over the Supreme Court. But will an aggressive approach actually work?
For information to use in advertisements. According to the reporting of our corporate cousins at the Wall Street Journal, actual human beings are reading through your email inbox. Wouldn't you like to know how to stop them? We'll tell you exactly how. Top of the hour on Shepard Smith Reporting.
Now to the timing of Supreme Court Justice Kennedy's retirement and what it could mean for the midterms, with the National Review writing, if you believe that Democrats are already energized, then the more this will engage previously lethargic Republicans, the closer this election will be, but maybe not. Joining me now, Josh Holmes, founding partner of Cavalry LLC and former Chief of Staff to Senator Mitch McConnell, and Michael Blake, DNC Vice Chair and New York State Assembly member. Great to have you both here. What do you think, Josh, now that the time has passed? It's almost been a week since we learned about this retirement, and the Republicans feel like they have the upper hand. But is there anything that they should be worried about going into this fight?
Well, I mean, look, there's plenty of things to worry about. You've got an extremely engaged Democratic base that are going to smear whoever the nominee is with every charge under the sun, regardless of whether it has any merit or not. I found it incredibly interesting that Democrats basically rolled out their talking points on how they were going to oppose a nominee without knowing who the nominee is going to be yet. So, look, they're going to fight tooth and nail absolutely to the end on this, but I think the Democrats have more vulnerabilities here because ultimately what's spilling out into the open here before the midterms is an extremely out of touch with the center of the electorate base of the Democratic Party that is going to be on display for all to see.
But how do you see it, Michael? I'm assuming differently, especially when it comes to, is it conventional wisdom getting it wrong again, that the Democrats are not where the rest of the country is or where the growing majority is? I saw that the congressional ballot in the Quinnipiac poll has again gone to 9 points in favor of the Democrats, despite all that's been happening that has been, I guess, good for Republicans. So are Republicans getting this wrong?
Absolutely. And Dana, good to be with you again. First, when I'm listening to Josh just be completely disconnected, and when we talk about disconnect, he seems to be ignoring the fact that when President Obama tried to move forward with a Supreme Court nominee, Mitch McConnell and others repeatedly said absolutely not, they wouldn't move forward in that manner. Now, the argument they tried to make was, well, that was during a presidential year, we should wait to the end of election. But yet this year, all of a sudden, we shouldn't wait to the end of election. Secondly, how could we have had 43 legislative pickups in all across the country if we're so disconnected? Clearly, folks are connected when we're standing up talking about health care and jobs and education, those opportunities. And lastly, let's be clear, we're starting to hear on both sides a legitimate concern that is happening from senators of how can we move forward when we have no idea what could be the vision and the path of a potential Supreme Court nominee in the face of what's happening right now when it comes to immigration, when it comes to health care, when it comes to the announcement on today as relates to education. It is clear that we are the ones that are connected to what's happening right now, and that's the reason why we've been winning elections.
Josh, let you respond to whatever you want, but I do want to point out, when Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, made the decision, in that presidential election year to not move forward with Merrick Garland. And, that was extremely risky because he made that decision early on when most of the polls said that Hillary Clinton was likely to win.
Yeah, that's right. And he made it based on previous precedent about what kind of action the Senate takes in the last year of a constitutionally mandated presidential year. So, Michael, if you look at the facts, they're not irrelevant here, and they have absolutely nothing to do with midterm elections. As to your larger point, what we're talking about here from the Democratic Party is abolishing ICE. We're talking about impeaching President Trump. We're talking about government-run, full, nationalized health care, what they call Medicare for all. What they're talking about is repealing all of the tax cuts that the American people have just gotten into place. Now, how do you think that plays in places like North Dakota, Indiana, West Virginia, Missouri, Arizona, Nevada, Florida, all the states that they have extreme liabilities here? So if you want to talk about who's out of touch, let's have that conversation in those states because those are the ones that matter.
Let me play for you, and I'll let Michael, I'll give you the last word, but I do want to play for you. Tom Perez, the DNC chairman, was asked about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and he thinks that she's got a bright future. Listen.
She represents the future of our party. Alexandria's victory was just a remarkable reminder of the depth that we have in the Democratic Party. And what Alexandria has in common with people like Conor Lamb, who also won an upset victory, is that they're fighting for the issues that their constituents care most about.
I'm curious what you think about that, Michael. I'll give you the last word because I just had MJ Hager. She's one of the DCCC recruits for this cycle. She's a Democrat veteran. I guess I don't want to put labels on her, but I'd say she's quite moderate compared to Cortez, and yet could both be the actual future of the Democratic Party. I'll give you the last word.
Absolutely. First, Alexandria is a phenomenal candidate that it was connected, and she is connected to the issues on the ground. And that is no disrespect to Congressman Crowley, but clearly her election demonstrates what people are looking for. To Josh's point, and again, it's a reminder of why they're disconnected. She talked about Medicare for all. She talked about how we stand together so we're not separating families because families belong together. We talk about the necessity when it comes to education and jobs. Let's be very clear. The reason why we have been winning in elections, especially in deep red areas across the country since Trump has been elected, is that we as Democrats are fighting for education and economic equity, while the Republicans are fighting for the top 1%. Today was another reminder of that. It is hard to ignore the constitutional reality that people can utilize race when it comes to trying to create affirmative action and equality when it comes to education. This is why we're standing up and stepping up in that aspect.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
so this is an opportunity for all of us.
I'm pretty sure that the two of you could go back and forth, and I'd be fascinated to listen for an hour. But instead, I'm going to have to let you go and wish you a very happy 4th of July, happy Independence Day. Josh Holmes and Michael Blake,
Dana. Happy 4th.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So LeBron James is going to Hollywood. What will it mean on and off the courts? Jared Max joins us next because he wants to know what I think about this. Planet, you know by now that LeBron James is heading to Los Angeles. King James is set to join Magic Johnson as the centerpiece of his attempt to rebuild the Lakers. I'm joined by Jared Max, sports reporter for Fox News Headlines 24/7. I mean, everybody really wants to know what I think about this, but I need to ask you, what does it mean for the Lakers and for the NBA overall?
For starters, it makes the LA Lakers relevant once again. 5 years in a row, they missed the playoffs. And all of a sudden, Magic Johnson, who's the president of basketball operations, he's a Lakers legend, comes back, says we need to do something. Even said if we don't land a large free agent a year from now, he indicates I'm going to look to walk away a year or two. Well, that's not going to happen. Saturday night, it was LeBron James and Magic Johnson at one of LeBron's mansions in Brentwood putting this all together. For the Lakers, this is huge because already, since the news broke, the Lakers have brought in another big free agent, Rajon Rondo. It's kind of like you're back in high school. You found out where the coolest kid in school, which party that person's going to be at.
And that's where you want to go?
That's where you want to go.
And then what about the sales of LeBron's jerseys?
For jerseys, this is unbelievable. According to Fanatics.com, which is where the jerseys come from in the NBA, 600% more jerseys sold or were pre-ordered in a 3-hour period on Sunday night than they were 4 years ago at the same time. At the same time when he went back to Cleveland. So a huge jump here for Los Angeles.
And what about their tickets?
Tickets also going through the roof. Last season, you could get into the home opener for under $70 at StubHub. This year, right now, we're up to $545 is what StubHub is looking at. In fact, visits to the Lakers StubHub tickets page, same date last year, July 1st, an increase of almost 7,400%.
So then, will Cleveland take a big hit?
they do take a big hit. There's that gigantic banner, several stories wide.
Yeah, I feel bad for Cleveland.
Which is coming down today. It's the second time they've been burned by this. LeBron James is more than just basketball. People who never cared to go to a Lakers game will want to go. It's an unbelievable intersection of sports and entertainment, I think like we've never seen before. Huge for basketball, huge for fans.
And you heard it all here on the Daily Briefing.
And bad for the rest of the NBA.
As the fans demanded that they have found out about it. All right, Jared, thank you.
Thanks.
So the staff of the Capital Gazette newspaper, of course, they're still recovering from the deadly shooting. They got a big boost from the Stanley Cup champions this morning.